Welcome everyone to the July 23rd XMod Pro user group meeting. I'm Melinda Simone Ford, Vice President of DNNDev, and today, let's see, since we're got some viewers on the line, I posted the link if you would like to participate in the meeting, and that is on our Google Plus page. So if you go over there, you can participate. Just please remember to mute your microphone. And once you've done that, you can watch us live and participate. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, we do have a Q&A app here in the Google Hangouts. If you will just enter your question, we'll answer those as we go along during the talk and the presentation. If you do ask a question during someone's presentation, we may wait until the end to answer the question. So just remember that that Q&A is there. I'll post that reminder up there right now. Also, if you were able to attend last week's meeting, we announced our XMod Pro Exchange. If you weren't, the XMod Pro Exchange is a new page on our website that if you go to DNNDev.com/XMPC, you will see that the XMod Pro community has contributed some solutions and snippets and how-tos on how to build different solutions using XMod Pro. And you can just go to that page, and even anyone can contribute. And you just select the detail button. You'll see the information pop up on the solution you're interested in. And so we hope that is a quick and fun way for you to start learning XMod Pro. It will include forms and templates, some feeds, even some SQL code. So check that out when you get a chance. And that was an introduction or something new that we set out or mentioned last month. So this meeting today, we're going to have two speakers, and that includes Patrick Ryan. He is the author of Discover XMod Pro, the company Reflect Media Group, and a XMod Pro developer and trainer. Patrick will be discussing the database side of his category solution. If you've seen the last few months, he's given some great presentations on parent-child category listings and demonstrating that, so he'll talk about the database side of that. And then our other speaker is Kelly Ford, and he's the creator of XMod Pro and the president of DNNDev. He will be showing how to create an XMod Pro pop-up form using DNN's mobile function. And with that, I'd like to get you started today with Kelly Ford. Kelly, would you like to start out the meeting?
Okay, thank you, Melinda. And welcome to the user group for July. And let me just turn off Melinda's mic there. There we go. Yes, first of all, I want to reiterate what Melinda said about the XMod Pro Exchange. It is a community-based exchange of forms, templates, SQL scripts. Whenever you need to send code to someone, or you're answering questions on the DNN site, DNNDev site, and you need to post form code, template code, whatever, maybe give the exchange a look as a way to post your stuff, and it makes it very easy for people just simply to copy your code and then put it into their solution. We want to see this grow with community involvement. We'll continue to add our own submissions to that, but the more the community gets involved, the better off everybody is in terms of finding that bit of code, that snippet of code, or even that entire solution built with XMod Pro that you need to satisfy the client, or to at least learn a particular technique in XMod Pro. So I really encourage you to check it out. It's at DNNDev.com/XMPC. With that said, let me move on to a question that we get a lot, and I've never actually responded to it, but I figured this was a good time to talk about how to actually post or pop up an XMod Pro form. We get a question, I don't know, at least once a month. How do I show an XMod Pro form popped up like the login in DNN? And so I figured today would be a good time to show the flexibility of XMod Pro. You're not locked into what we decide that you should use to do pop-ups, because we try to keep our code as clean as possible in terms of HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and we try not to layer a lot of stuff on that can get in the way later on down the road, even though it might look good to start. So this will be an example of that. We just started this morning to think about the process, and it turns out it's really simple to do with XMod Pro. You just need to learn a little bit about .NET Nuke's modal pop-up functionality. It's a separate JavaScript file that gets downloaded in virtually every skin, and it is what you see, what handles the pop-up form for login and other pop-ups that you might see throughout DNN. And so all we're going to do is we're going to figure out a way to replace or to actually stick our XMod Pro forms in so that it look just like you would expect to see in a DNN modal pop-up. So with that said, let me get started. I'm going to shift my screen over to the my Windows machine here. Hang on. Okay. There we go. All right, now can you see that okay?
Can you enlarge it?
Enlarge it. All right. One more time. Okay, that should be big enough, I think. If not, just post in the Q&A section or the group chat or on the page, and Linda will pick it up and let me know if it's too small. Okay, so what we have here is nothing. We just have a standard page with an XMod Pro module on it. There are several steps that we need to go through in order to set this up. And the first thing we want to think about is, how do we want our pop-up to look? And really what we want in order to make it look like a regular pop-up is a blank skin. If we were just to put this on another page, we would get all the accoutrements that come along with a standard page in .NET Nuke, and we don't want that in this case. We want a blank skin so that it looks just like a pop-up form. And that turns out to be very easy. We create a blank skin for that, and that might sound hard if you've never done anything with skins before, but it turns out to be quite easy. So let me show you what that looks like. And I'm in, go to one of our test sites here. It's that one, and we'll go to portals, default, skins, and you can see here is my blank skin that I created just this morning. It is filled with lots and lots of files, very complicated, as you can tell. So we'll just open up the one file that our skin is, and this is all it has in it. Simple required control tag at the top of the page, and then the one required pane, the content pane that every skin requires in order to be .NET Nuke compatible. That's it. There's no reference to any CSS, no JavaScript. It is just bare bones. You can't get any more bare bones than this and still have it be a skin. So I will post this along with the code for the session, but it's pretty obvious. You could probably just type this out in 20 or 30 seconds and be done with it. But that's all it is. There's nothing in here, and that's the key, because we don't want it to be in here. Now, if you want it to look, that's going to pop up with a white background, so you could add some CSS to the skin to match the background color of your site, or do whatever else you want. But this, what?
Can you enlarge the text
on this one? That is harder to do. I may not be able to without. I don't think Visual Studio has a zoom, does it? I think you have to change the fonts. Okay, so let me just read through this for those who... You could probably just open up any skin and pull out everything but these two tags. The first one is the percent sign, the @ symbol, and then control. Language equals VB in my case. It could be C# if you want. Auto event wire up equals false. Explicit equals true. inherits equals .NET_nuke.UI.skins.skin, and then your closing percent greater than symbol. And that's required of all skins, so you can just look at any skin file and pull that out. And then the only other thing that's required is this div tag. This is a standard HTML div with an ID of content pane, spelled exactly like that, capital C-O-N-T-E-N-T, capital P-A-N-E, and you have to have the run at equals server property of the div tag, and that will get you going. Just stick that in as I showed you, in your skins folder. I put it in the default so that it's available to every site in the default portals directory, and then the skins directory underneath that, and then just create whatever name you want for the folder. I called it blank because that's what it is, it's a blank skin. And then just stick your default.ascx file in that folder, and that should get you going. You'll be able to select that from .NET Nuke, which I'll show you how to do right now.
Kelly, Kevin Justice suggests, could you change the desktop resolution to lower to have a larger font size? Would that work?
Let me see. This is what I get for working in the Mac most of the time. Oh, that's pretty. Okay. How's that? Any response from anybody? Is that all right?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh. Oh, okay. I probably have to reshare.
You can see your XMod Pro's screen.
Okay. How's that?
You can see your XMod Pro test site.
Okay, so you can see the website with the button that says show pop-up form. Okay, so that works. We'll work with that. All right, so let me get back on track here, and I need to log in. Okay, now we're back here. And so let's just create our page here. I'm going to create a new page. And the thing is that we're going to use a form view module, and we're going to put this on a separate page, and we're going to pop up that page inside the modal form. That's the idea. So we'll just call this pop-up, and we'll just call the title form. And we'll save that. We want to change the skin now, though, before we save this. We're going to change the skin to the blank skin we just created. And that'll be listed under host blank here. And then we'll save it. Now, when you do this, because this is a blank page, it won't have the DNN toolbar. It won't have any way to do anything, essentially, so except edit your module. So actually, before I do that, let me go ahead and just keep this at the standard dark night, let's say, for the moment. So this is our new page, and it is called pop-up, as you can see in the user or the URL. I'm going to add a module to this page, and surprise, surprise, it's going to be an XMod module. And we'll search, and here's our XMod Pro. Where is our XMod form view? Let's try this again. There it is. I'll just drag this into the content pane, because remember our skin only has a content pane, so we want to drag it in there. And now we can cancel out of this. I guess it's a little too big enough. All right, well, that's beautiful. I can't even reach the cancel button. Thanks, DNN. Appreciate it. Just ruined my demo. So I will just simply go to homepage, and then we can go to the pop-up here in a second. Should be the menu, pop-up. There we go. And I want to edit this page. And we're just going to configure a module to use a, well, we haven't created the form, have we? Let's create the form. Okay, so we'll go to our control panel and create a new form. Now what I'm going to do is, because I want to be able to show you something, I'm going to use an existing form that I'd created for a previous demonstration. This is just a frequently asked question. It's a very simple form. It's just got a question field and a text area for the answer field. So it should be nice and simple, nothing to get in your way.
Quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin would like to know, why would you use XMod Pro Form View instead of XMod Pro and set the form?
Well, technically you could do any, but when you have a form view, it automatically shows up whenever you load the page. So if you were going to, you'd have to, in order to make the form itself show up, like we're doing in this example, you'll want to do a form view just as you would normally if you're going to do like a contact us form or a registration form or a login form or any of those kinds of things that you don't want someone to have to click on a button to use. Then you would use a form view. That's why I'm using it in this case. You actually could just pop up anything you want in this. It doesn't even have to be an XMod Pro page, but this happens to be the example we're using. But this could be a pop-up template view for XMod Pro as well if you want to show something in that regard. There's no restriction for what you can use with this. So we're just doing a standard, let's just pretend that we have a list of frequently asked questions and the admin has the ability to add additional FAQs to the list. So instead of click on a button to go to a different page, we could pop up the form to add this FAQ right there in the page. And that's kind of the scenario that we're working with here. So let's take a look at the form. Basically I want you to ignore almost everything in here. This is just styling, and this is our actual form. All we're interested in here is this section. And this is how we close our pop-up. And what we're doing is a neat little trick that you can use in all of your forms. And or even in your, in all your forms. They don't have to be part of the pop-up. But if you stick in a script as part of your add success template or your edit success template in your forms, you can run script when that template loads. And so it looks very natural. And that's what we're doing here. We're just adding a script tag, and we're just calling a little teeny bit of JavaScript. Basically, we're calling a method on the DNNModal object, and that's to close this particular pop-up. And that is going to run only after the successful submission of a form. So that's exactly when we want to run it. So again, this will be in the notes that come with the session, but I wanted to show you that little trick. It's really nice. Your user doesn't have to trigger it to close the pop-up. It just happens automatically, and it only happens when it's successful. So it's perfect for this kind of solution. So that's all we're worried about, is that little bit there. Now let's go ahead and cancel, and let's configure a page to use that form. And that was the July 2015 user group. I'm not doing anything special, just saving that. And now you can see here is our very, very basic form. And it's got our question and our answer and an add and a cancel button. I'm not going to wire up the cancel button. You can do the same thing for that if you'd like. Right now we're just focused on the add button. So whenever someone successfully submits their FAQ and it goes into the database, then this is going to close out or attempt to close out the pop-up dialog. So right now, obviously, it's not going to do that because this is just sitting here on a page. What we need to do now is to configure so everything looks good. Well, actually, let's just go ahead and see how this works first of all, and then we'll step through ways to make this better. So I'm going to go to just a regular old page, and I'm going to we need to create a template, and let's do that now. So let's call this. Well, I will just actually. I think I have my FAQ list here. So let's see how this looks. Yeah, this has got some extra stuff in here. I will attempt. Hopefully it'll work. We'll see. This is using Bootstrap. So let's go ahead and edit this. And all we're going to do is we're going to add an XMod Pro jQuery ready tag so that this executes only when the page is fully loaded. So we'll do XMod jQuery ready. Right, and for that, we're going to call our DNN modal. So this is already inside of a script tag. All we need to do now is just create a button, and let's set this up at the top of our template right here. Just a standard button tag, HTML button tag. And my mic is a little messed up here. All right, so the type equals button. This means it's not going to post back. And that we'll give it a class of PopUp. There's nothing special about the name here. I'm just making that up. It makes it more clear to me. So PopUp. And we'll also style it for DNN primary action. All right, and let's give it some text. We'll just call it show pop-up form. Okay. Now we have our button. Now we need to actually do something when someone clicks that button. So that's what we're going to do in our jQuery ready. And for that, we're going to just target the button with that class of PopUp. And this is using jQuery, of course. It's going to be button tag with a class of PopUp. Make sure I spelled that. Yep, PopUp. And we're going to trap the click event. So this is going to be on click. Get this function that we're going to create. Pass in the event object. We can cancel it. The first thing we're going to do here is we want to make sure that nothing else happens when the normal process for this button doesn't occur. So we're going to say e.prevent default. This is standard JavaScript. And now we're going to call the .NET object called DNN modal, and the method on that is called show. And it takes a few parameters. First one, of course, is going to be the URL that you want to show. And in our case, it is going to be the page that we just created, and I have forgotten what that was. Does anybody remember?
PopUp?
Is it just PopUp?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll call PopUp. And the key thing here is we want to pass in a parameter called PopUp equals true. This is going to tell .NET Nuke, or this function here, that it's supposed to be displayed inside of a pop-up. Otherwise, it will just show you the page, the full page, as if it were a postback. Now, the next thing, next parameter is whether or not you want to. What was it called? Whether or not you want to. Here, let me just show you. This is the. I went ahead and deminified the JavaScript library that this is in, and here is the show function. Your URL, this is a Boolean show return. You can specify the height and width and whether or not to refresh, and also a closing URL. Now, I will leave it to you to experiment with these other options. Honestly, I haven't gone through all of them to see exactly what they do. All we're going to work with is the height and the width. So we're going to essentially pass in null values or empty values for these other options. So I'll leave that up there for a second while I fill this out. So I'm going to pass in false for show return. We are not going to need it. A height, have experimented already, and that's going to be 350 pixels. The width is going to be 650 pixels. You can change this to whatever you need. Refresh is true because we want it to actually refresh the whole page and reload our data. And then finally, we're going to pass it an empty string because we don't want it to go anywhere after closing the modal. So that's what we got. See how simple that is? Not a lot of code at all. Now, if it works, then we'll be geniuses, right? Okay, so that's FQ test list we want to work with. Let's configure our page now to use that template. FQ test list. All right, so you can see our facts with the data we already have. So I think I showed this in a previous user group. Now we have our show pop-up form. This is really all we're interested in. And we're going to click on it. And you can see it pops up our form, actually the entire page in the window. Obviously this is not ideal. And by the way, you're always going to get this if you're logged in as a host or an admin. We'll show you how it looks afterwards when we're not logged in. But we want to get rid of all the accoutrements. So that's why we're using the blank skin. So let's close this out. And you saw how it refreshed because we closed the window. We'll go to that page. Actually, we don't even. Yes, we'll go to that page now and the pop-up page. And we're going to change the skin to our blank skin. All right. There we go. And we're going to update our page. There, now everything is pretty much blank here, except for the stuff that it shows because I'm logged in. Now let's go back. Of course, we can't navigate to it, so we'll just go back to our page, which is XMP, and we'll try it again. Show pop-up form. Now you can see all the other accoutrements are gone. It's still not beautiful because we're logged in. So let's just open up a new window here. And we will go to okay, so now we're not logged in, and we're seeing our FAQ. Show the pop-up form. Oh, do I have that on login? All right, hang on. Just a little bit of tweaking here. Get around DNN permissions. Pages. I want to manage our pages. Find our pop-up right here. And set the permissions to let anybody see it. You might not want to have this in a production, but we're going to do it here. Okay, now let's go back to our incognito window, and we'll just reload. Okay, now show our pop-up form. And there you go. It looks like a normal pop-up form. And it can be moved around just as you want. Now, on our module, we can get rid of this by just removing the title. So let's go ahead and do that. Go back to our form page, and we'll go to settings. This is all just DNN stuff. We're going to get rid of our module title, make it look a little better, and update it. And now we'll try again. There we go. So none of that nasty default text. So all we have to do now is say a question about pop-ups or pop-ups. 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 There we go. And how about pop-ups are the answer? Everybody loves pop-ups. Okay, so now we have just added something. Let's see if it showed up. Look at that. There's a question about pop-ups, and pop-ups are the answer. There is the pop-up form and how you use it to pop up your own XMod Pro forms inside of a pop-up, DNN pop-up. Are there any questions? Assuming not.
No questions.
All right. Well, I hope that answered all of your questions, and I hope you get a lot of good benefit out of that. It was kind of fun to do. Next up is Patrick, and Patrick is going to be closing out his, what is it, 3-4-part series? I don't know. You have what, 26 chapters in your book now, so who knows how many sessions you've got.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So Patrick is very good at explaining a lot of things in just the right amount of detail, I think, and sometimes that's a lot of detail, but still necessary. So we'll do part 3 of Patrick's session. Patrick, take it away.
Is this part 3? I think it might be part 4.
Is it 4?
It might be 4.
Okay. All right, part 4. Okay.
Well, hello,
part 4
everybody.
is 3-part trilogy. Go ahead.
Oh, you just got a question, Kelly. Want to grab that real quick before I ramble?
Yeah, did I?
If you're on page 2 of FAQ and do the pop-up, does the refresh take you back to page 1?
Yeah, it would take you back to page 1. There are ways that you can handle that, but you'll need to set up your template to work that way. So by default, it wouldn't. We're on page 2 now. We'll just say up page 2, answer page 2, and we'll add it. And you can see that we're back to page 1. So yeah, that is a side effect. Most of the time you're going to be using something like this for a contact us form, and it's not what page it takes you back to is not all that relevant because it will be one page. It won't be paged results. There are ways that you can get around that. You can certainly set up your template to recognize URL parameters for what page you want to be on. You can pass that page number into your form, and your form could then pass that back as part of the, or actually your, I haven't played with this, but I would suspect that the closing URL in that modal call will, you can just change that to pass that parameter, the page parameter, back to this page. That would be my theory as to how that would work. And then you would just use a stored procedure in your list data source that would pick up on that page number query and return the correct set of results. It's more complicated, of course. It's not terribly complicated, but it does require you to do some extra work. As with most good things in life, there's a little extra work that's involved. But I think it would be doable. If the closing URL bit of the DNN modal doesn't work for you, then you could still do a redirect in your XMod Pro form, passing in whatever parameters you need to your original page, much like we do with other forms, or search forms, for instance. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay, Patrick, take it away.
Alrighty, well, hello everybody. I hope you're enjoying the summer heat. I know that I'm not in Western Kentucky in a swampland, but Kelly as well. I'm sure it's hot over there. But we've been doing a lot of traveling. Got 6 kids all together, and they're all out of school, and it's a nightmare, but we shall survive. And pardon the lack of a camera, and I am away from my typical office, so I'm kind of doing things a little bit different today, as well as I won't be extending the code examples that I had before. I'm going to be showing you the completed solution and then stepping through and trying to explain to the best of my ability how that exactly works. So again, what we're talking about here is how to create parent-child category relationships. In this case, it would be for like classified ads for a user to post something for sale and select the categories and child categories that they want that ad to be displayed in. And how do you deal with that from that point, getting it to the database and then updating the record itself and then getting it back to the database for updates. So it's a little bit complicated, but once you've got the code, stick it in Evernote or whatever you use to keep it, and you'll have it. So let me just start off by sharing my screen. And where am I? I am, wow, this thing gives me way too many options. Okay, here we go. share. And do you see my screen? Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, so what you're seeing here is aza-z.com. That's my...
Patrick, can you enlarge your window a bit?
I can. Let me try to do this the right way. I'm on Windows here. Let's see. Aha. All right, there we go. How's that? So this is aza-z.com. This is a classified site for the Arizona area. And I've got an admin section here called Classifieds Admin. And by the way, this is the actual solution that is in Discover XMod Pro, the book. So at this point, I'm going to be discussing the categories. So let me show you what those look like. We've created categories, and this was explained in the previous three sessions. And you can see you've got parent categories, child categories, and so on. And if you want to know how to group those together properly in a template, take a look at the previous user group sessions. So now that the categories are created, pardon the screaming in the background. Again, if you hear that, 6 kids. Okay, so on this page here, this is my sellers tab where I can see all of my sellers on the site. And, ooh, that guy got banned. That's bad. Okay, here's JDO3. And I'm going to impersonate a seller here. So I'm going to click Post Ad. I'm posting an ad on behalf of the seller. And I can give it a title like, this is great. I'm going to skip the rest of the stuff. It's not really important. And go right down here to the categories. So this is cool. And what we did was, with a whole bunch of JavaScript, is turned a multi-select list box into a functioning category tree. So this works really well. It's synced with our list box, which has the data field, which is data bound. Now let me explain how this exactly works. When you have a multi-select list, what that does is it creates a delimited string. Now the default delimiter is a pipe character. So you've got, I can kind of type up here my URL. So you've got category IDs here, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever they are. And if auto parts has an ID of 1, it would look like this. If you have another category, let's say with the ID of 3, it would look like that. And then 5, and then so on. So that's what the delimited string will look like when it's sent to your database. Now, in the database, a common mistake that people use, or that people do all the time, is they don't normalize their data. So what I mean by that is you'll have a column. Let's say you could have a single column in your database or in your table called categories for the ad table. I'll go ahead and jump over to SQL Server and show you that. So let me go up here to my tables. And let's go to classified ad. I'm not sure how to enlarge this off the top of my head, but you'll get the gist. So
you can change the resolution like I did.
I'm afraid to do that because it was a nightmare for you. Is it hard?
Really, I thought it went very smoothly.
Notice, if you can see here, I don't have any column whatsoever designated as categories. Oh my 1-year-old is having a blast. But a common thing that people do is they would create a category called, like categories, and they would give it an nvarchar or just varchar, and they would just string all that stuff together. Now, what's easy about that is it's easy to get it back into the edit form, because when you're editing your data, your list items, your list box, it needs to have that delimited string the same way it was put into the database. But this is a no-no as far as database normalization is concerned. You should never squish multiple values into a column like that. Instead, you need to break those out into a relational table, and that's where you get one-to-many relationships, many-to-many relationships, and so on. Now, what's difficult about that, it's easy to go in. Well, it's not easy. it's easier to go in than it is to go out. But the point is you need to have another table. For example, this one right here. That's called XMP classified underscore add category. And that table's responsibility is to simply list the relationship between the add ID and the category ID. And if I go into design mode here, you can see that what I actually have here is what's called a compound key. I don't need a separate identity column here. I've got add ID and category ID together as a compound key. And how you do that is actually really easy. You just select both, you right-click, and if this wasn't set, you would choose Set Primary Key. And that ensures that no one add can be assigned to the same category more than once. Now you always need to, of course you can protect this from your application layer, the client side of things, but it's always important to reinforce data integrity on the server. Set up your foreign keys, set up your relationships, and protect that data. So let's jump back over to here. So again, the goal is to take that pipe delimited string and do an insert for each one that's found into that pipe delimited string. So let's take a look. I've got a stored procedure. And that stored procedure is called XMP underscore classified admin post add. And you can see that here is my categories data field. That's going to be the pipe delimited string. So if we jump over to SQL Server, this is where it gets really cool. Let's go down here. Here it is. I'll click modifying that. We'll take a look. Come on. There we go. All right, so here's my parameters that I'm passing in. And here is the categories. And by the way, I'm also doing the same thing with additional images. So we've got our standard insert here into our main table, the classified add table. Nothing to do with categories. And after the insert, we need to get the value of the new record. What is the ID? And that's easy to do. I'm declaring a parameter called new ID. I'm setting it as an int, and that equals scope identity. And what that does is if it's the first record inserted into the table ever, this would be equal to 1. If it's the second one, it would be equal to 2. So that just grabs a new ID. I need that new ID to send it into the category add table. Now, this is the cool part. I've got this. Oh, that's images. Let's hide that. All right, categories. While len, which is length of categories, is greater than 0, that means if there are any. So if we've got 1, 2, 10, or even 100, like so, while this number, while the length of that is greater than 0, which in this little demo here it is, going to do something. And you're going to do that over and over again until it's no longer greater than 0. We are going to insert into XMP classified add category. And the values that we're going to insert is the new ID for add ID. There's the new ID. And this is cool right here. We're taking the category string, so for example this right here, and we're saying left categories. We're looking for the character index of that pipe, and then plus the pipe minus 1. Now what the minus 1 does, see, we've got one little weird issue here. We don't have a pipe in the beginning of this string, and we don't have a pipe at the end of this string. So what we're doing is we're adding it just in case, and we're subtracting 1 regardless. So we've got this whole string, we're looking for the character index of the very first pipe, so left, and we're basically saying grab just this number. And now that we have that number, we're going to change the value of categories. So that's where we use stuff. Stuff is pretty cool. And by the way, there's lots of ways that you can do this same thing. I just like to do it this way. So the stuff function, what it does is it inserts a string into another string. So I'm actually resetting categories to be equal to something else. So what it'll do is it'll delete a specified length of characters in the first string at the start position that you set, and then inserts it into the second string, into the first string at the start position. Ooh, yeah, I read that. I was quoting, so if that sounded really crazy, don't blame me. So we've got a character expression here. This is the expression to be evaluated. We've got categories. Where are we going to start? We're going to start at 1. Character index, there's our pipe, and we're going to be replacing that part with nothing. So what that'll do is, as soon as it hits this line right here, it's going to turn that 1 and it's going to take away U like so. And it's going to keep looping through that, boom, boom, until it's left with its final number, until its length is 0. So one insert after another, and it is quite fast. And that's how you get the insertion. So I can demonstrate that. I went into edit form there. Let me go back. XMod Pro is for free. You can download it on my hackathon website. And let's choose some categories. 1, 2. Or maybe a couple others. Oh, I got 2 others in there. And post ad. All right, so if I go to my ads now, you can see it is right there. And that is the ID of 29. So if we go back here, we can find 29 right here. And if we go to the add category table, you can see the categories. Add ID 29 and then the category IDs. Now we have to do something that's called denormalization. And what that means is we need to take our cleaned up data and make it ugly again. Not necessarily ugly because we're pulling it out of SQL Server, and it's just to use within our form. So if I were to go here and click Edit, I need to know what categories this thing belongs to. As you can see, we've got the, that's not the right one. That's the right one. Yeah. There it is. So there's our categories, and that works quite well. Well, how in the world do we make that happen? And that's another neat little trick. I'm going to edit this page, and that's my edit form. Take a look at my select command. I'm selecting all the relevant stuff about the ad, but I'm using a user-defined function. When you see these, you'll typically see them as UDF. That's good practice. It's just to let other developers know, hey, I made this. This is a user-defined function. And I've got one called UDF_XMP_generate delimited string, and I'm passing add ID, cat as the type, and then the delimiter I'm using. It's going to make sense why I'm passing all this stuff in just a second. I created a function that is reusable, and you'll hear the term dry. Don't repeat yourself. If you can find a way to reuse code and just allow it to pass parameters and stuff, write less, do more, jQuery. I like that too. All right, so that's my select command. In the job of that particular one right here, I'm creating a dynamic token here. Is to create that delimited string. So categories is the data field for that list box. So let's jump back into SQL Server and go down here to my functions, generate delimited string. So I will paste this in up here and explain this. So my function, if you've never created a function but have created a stored procedure, very similar. Although this particular type of function, a scalar valued function, its job is to return one thing. And it needs an ID, it needs a type, and it needs a delimiter. The ID is the ad ID of the ad that I'm editing. The type is cat for categories. And the delimiter that I want to use is this pipe. So it says if type equals image, do this stuff here. But in our case, nope. If type equals cat, do this stuff here. Now, I'll repeat myself. This is another thing you can do many ways. But I'm using Kalesc, which is really neat. Now, what it does is it returns the first non-null expression within its arguments. So you can have a whole bunch of arguments here, but let's step through it. We're saying we've declared string in nvarchar max. We don't know how long it's going to be. Max is overkill, but that's okay. Select string equals Kalesc, string plus delimiter, and then I'm putting just an empty string here just in case there's nothing there, and that would be the non-null value we can pass back, plus cast category ID as nvarchar. From XMP classified ad category where ad ID equals the ID that I passed into this. So ignore this for a second, ignore that, and we've got a standard select statement. We're basically saying, give me the category ID. It's going to give me a list. It's going to give me rows of category IDs from this add category table where add ID equals the one that we passed in. Now, because we're not doing anything else with this, additional columns or anything, we're just looking for one value. What this does is it will take all of the numbers that are returned and add the delimiter between them and cast the category ID as a string type data type, so the nvarchar there, because otherwise you're probably going to get errors because it is an integer once we send it into the database. So I need to cast that as a string because what we're going to be ending up with is that same string. In doing that, we'll produce that string that our form actually needs. Now, the last part of the cycle is when we submit our data and we're sending an update. How do we deal with that? We need to normalize once again. So I've got another store procedure for updating an ad. Slow. Okay, so the first part is just updating the main ad table right here. Easy enough. And we'll ignore the images. Now what I'm doing is I'm initially deleting from the add category table where ad ID equals the ID of the one that we're updating it. So we're deleting every bit of this. And I'm doing the same thing that I did before. Then I'm just reinserting them. Now I just want to mention something. It can be considered a little bit more advanced. But if you really want to be secure in your data, you could probably just wrap this in a transaction. Because if your code's messed up or something weird's messed up and this works but something breaks down here, well, that's not going to undo this. But you can take a look at that. Look that up on transactions if you haven't before. You can actually do try-catch blocks in transactions. You can have custom ways that you can handle the errors. But the biggest thing on that would be rolling back, and that would treat this whole thing as one unit of operation, one unit of work. And if any part fails, the whole thing needs to go back to its original state. Okay, so that actually is it for how you deal with that. And I'm going to be sharing code examples on this, but again, that's how you insert them into the database, normalize them, how you pack it back into a delimited string, and how you update it and renormalize when you change data. Any questions? I don't get any questions. I don't get any questions. I guess my presentation was just that good, Kelly.
Well, you went into a lot of what for most people would be advanced functionality. My question is there an advantage or disadvantage to just leaving, especially in the case that you've defined there, and just leaving the pipe delimited values in the table? I realize it's not normalized. However, it would make the process of splitting it back up and putting it back together not necessary. You'd only do it when you have to do it.
True. In my case, well, you always have the normal forms people that would scream at you and probably shoot you with a sniper rifle from a distance if you didn't fix it. But in my particular case, you got to think about how else will I want to use these. So you may want to show other categories as tags. You might want to list them as template data based on a particular ad where you want to be able to iterate over rows of data. And so in that particular case, that would be the major benefit of it. But querying data, for example, if you were doing a search, like clicking on a particular category, searching for ads or something, select star from classified ads where interjoin the category ad table where category equals whatever they clicked on. So that's another reason why it would be very important to do so.
I guess what I'm after is you would still, when you insert the record, you would still, or update the record, you still split that value apart, the pipe delimited string, and update your lookup table appropriately. However, you would still save the pipe delimited list in the original record. That way, when you pull it back in for editing and updating, then you wouldn't have to go through calling those other functions.
Okay, another good example for that. If I were to wrap this in a transaction, for example, this stored procedure in a transaction, and well, no, let me backtrack. I would see that as being redundant in data. So, for example, if you're able to break it apart to begin with, you should be able to put it back together on edits instead of having the same data duplicated in multiple places. Mm-hmm. You could, and you know, on very simple things where there's absolutely no concern or need for normalizing in that manner, you could. But I've always found, and this is what I encourage people to do, is always build things foundationally strong so that you're prepared for proper scalability. And always design your database and your tables in a way that it's ready for surprises later on down the road. You might have a client project that says, hey, I want to do this, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, that means I really need those categories in their own table, and now I've got 5,000 or 5 million rows of data with pipe delimited strings that I'm going to have to iterate over and deal with and stuff like that. So the only benefit of not doing this is it would be faster and easier. I'll admit, I mean, looking at this stuff myself, it's confusing, and it's confusing to explain because it looks so foreign and it's not really very readable. But oh, like yeah, the stuff I made a mistake on that. That's for finding the length. That's the length part. So that first character index of that pipe. So kind of like what I've done is I've figured these things out and I've stored them in my little code snippets, and I even forget how they. I'm sure everyone's done this. I forget the exact technicalities behind them because that was 2 years ago and I've already moved on to something else, and I just grab them from my bag of tricks when I know I need to use them. I don't know if I answered your question, but there's benefits, there's pros and cons to either way. But if you want to do database design correctly, then you need to normalize that data.
Correct. I guess my position was really, all right, what exactly are the trade-offs to just keeping the pipe delimited string in the database, as well as doing what you were doing. That would prevent you from having to do a lot of parsing when you're editing the form. You could just edit it like normal without calling the functions. But you would still have the lookup from having the data in the other table. Granted, yeah, it's a trade-off on redundancy, but in certain circumstances it might be worthwhile to have that little bit of extra data in your table just to make some other stuff easier.
Well, Kevin
That's
mentioned
true. Yeah.
it's really hard to do other queries when it's pipe delimited.
Yes. Quite. In the scenario I'm laying out, you would still have that in the other table, so you would query those tables. But very good. You have a session 5 for us?
I'll come up with something. It won't be this.
Okay.
I will definitely come up with something.
Well, I see a lot of stuff that in there that you might even dive into in a bit more depth. Maybe some of the lesser known functions in SQL that you've been using, like coalesce and stuff. Maybe come up with some examples that way. That might be interesting for people, but it's up to them. Whatever.
The coalesce is it's a weird animal. I mean, it can be used in so many different ways, and this is one of those sneaky things that you can do with it. And I don't think I figured it out on my own. I probably searched and found someone else who figured it out, and then I just dissected it to try to understand it. But yeah, I mean, some of this stuff can just get pretty crazy. But I'll think of something. I'll think of something pretty cool for the next time around.
Well, that's really good. I have enjoyed your sessions on this. This is what I would consider a really highly complicated solution that you've built, and to see the way you've pulled it apart and leveraged XMod Pro as well as your knowledge of SQL and JavaScript to do it is great. I love seeing that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that does it for this session of the July session of the XMod Pro user group. And I would encourage you, if you would like to join us in a user group, either to present or just simply to hang out with us, please do. We'll have another one in August. We do this every fourth Thursday of the month. And Melinda probably knows when the date of the next one is. No? So we'll have to figure it. Let me pull up my calendar real quick.
I'll pull up the calendar.
The fourth Thursday of August is
Oh, it's the 27th.
27th. Okay, August 27th. You heard it from Melinda. Join us on the Google Hangouts then August 27th at 11 a.m. Pacific, and that is what, 2 p.m. Eastern, I think.
And bring me presents because my birthday's the 20th. So virtual presents, please.
All right. We'll be celebrating Patrick's birthday. Bring cake.
I'll be turning 19.
Yeah, in maturity years. Yeah. Uh-huh. No. But again, we want to encourage not just us. We don't want to have to be, well, we enjoy it, but we don't want to monopolize the time in the user group. We want you to be able to present what you've built, either just to show off or to explain some techniques that you've come up with. We had Stephen Lauer on a couple of sessions from Australia, and thankfully he's getting some sleep this month. But we really would like to have you on. Just send us a note, post on our Google Plus page, contact us however you need to, and let us know what you'd like to talk about, and we'll get you set up for it get you set up for August if you'd like. And that's it, really. I want to encourage you to go to the Exchange. I'll be posting my code on the Exchange, and join us here again next month. Until then, have great fun Xmodding. See you later. Bye.